Hi, Mike Loveridge here. I'm another one of those old fogies who has a room full of music. Anyway, I've been curating this collection since 1967 when I was 13 years old. And it's grown over the years. And the thing is about this collection is that I never really bought most of the real popular stuff. I tended to go off the beaten track and find more interesting stuff, or at least what I thought was more interesting stuff. And as I'm watching the vinyl community videos on YouTube and seeing everything that people are talking about, I'm seeing a lot of the most popular bands and their albums discussed over and over again. And I think there's a lot of very good bands that are kind of overlooked at this point in time, even though they were very good. And I thought I'd take a crack at sharing some of those bands and maybe giving you an idea of some other people that you maybe should be listening to. All right? So, the first one we're going to be looking at is Garland Jeffreys, the self-proclaimed king of in-between. Now, Garland Jeffreys was a critically acclaimed singer-songwriter who was around in, the 70s and into the 80s and even up to the present day, where his last album, I think, was in 2017. And he's very good. He was born in 1943 in Brooklyn, grew up in Sheepshead Bay area. His ancestry had white lines, black lines, Puerto Rican lines, so he had a mishmash of cultures growing up and was exposed to all different kinds of music, which is reflected in his output because he kind of has soul elements, rock elements, reggae elements, ska elements, little jazz elements, and folk elements all mixed up in his music, which is probably part of the reason why he is the king of in-between and why, even though he was critically acclaimed, he never really had any success in America and bounced, around from label to label and everything and never really found a home or any real success here. He had a little bit of success in Europe and he even toured there as late as, in the 2000s and everything. So, anyway, after growing up in Brooklyn, he ended up at Syracuse University where he majored in art history. And excuse me. And while he was there, he met another kid from Long Island who he became lifelong friends with, by the name of Lou Reed. Yes, that Lou Reed. And so anyway, after he graduated, he bounced around. He went to Florence, Italy for a little while, and went to the Institute of Fine Arts in New York for a little while. And by 1966, he was playing in a series of minor bands and stuff in Lower Manhattan and writing songs and playing around the clubs there, rubbing shoulders with Lou and Eric Burden and John Cale and stuff. And eventually, around 1969 or so, he hooked up with some guys from Buffalo, New York, and formed a band. And they got signed to Vanguard Records. And in 1969 into 70, they recorded an album that was called Grinder's Switch, featuring Garland Jeffreys. Not to be confused with the southern rock band that came up like a few years later. But anyway, this album is kind of a Americana album. I mean, 1969, that was on the heels of the band's breakout success, so there was a lot of people kind of following their footsteps. The first song, in fact, kind of has New Orleans horns on it and everything like that. So it's kind of a folk rock Americana album. It's pretty good. I don't really have it. I listened to it on YouTube a few days ago for the first time, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's got Garland singing his strong, earthy, gritty, good soul-like vocals, and his songs are good. You know, kind of like in the Americana vein, and it's not really what we would expect from Garland in years to come. Anyway, that record didn't do much, and the band broke up by 1970, and Garland was back to playing around the clubs in Manhattan, you know, doing his own thing, solo stuff. And a few years later, around 1973, he got signed to Atlantic Records. And he put out this self-titled debut called Garland Jeffreys, obviously. Looks a little like this. This is the latest album I found by him. I haven't listened to it that much. It's pretty good. I mean, I kind of consider it like his Greetings from Asbury Park, because he isn't really formed yet. I mean, he does do a lot of stuff, but it's more folk rock, folk blues stuff. There is a little bit of reggae stuff in here. I mean, there's some songs, She Didn't Lie, that he'd probably revisit later. There's a song about Lon Chaney. There's it's a good album. I mean, I enjoy it a lot, and he's coming into his own. And he's always been a great singer, soul singer. Great stuff. Pick it up. And after that, they also released a single, which was his biggest claim to fame, which was Wild in the Streets. Wild in the streets. In the heat of the summer, better call up the plumber. But anyway, that song, it didn't do too good in the charts, but it was a FM hit. And it's been covered since by the Circle Jerks and a bunch of other people. But he did get dropped by Atlantic, or he took some time off anyway. And eventually he got signed by A&M Records. And in 1977 he put out this album, Ghost Rider. This is the first album I got to him because I was seduced by Wild in the Streets. And when this came out, I got it. It's a great album. I think it's a classic. It's got a bunch of great songs on it. Rough and Ready, I May Not Be Your Kind, New York Skyline, Cool Down Boy, which has James Taylor singing harmony vocals, actually doing the bass vocals, Cool Down Boy. Then Ghost Rider, which is a nice, cool reggae song, Lift Me Up, Y.O. It includes Wild in the Streets, 35mm Dreams, and Spanish Towns. There's reggae. Spanish Town has like a little Latin flavor to it. Rough and Ready is like a rock and roll tune. So he runs the gamut, which is probably part of the reason why he wasn't as successful, because they didn't know what genre to put him in. But he wrote great songs in all of them, and he was a great singer. Still is a great singer. Still could be a great singer. And this album is definitely worth picking up. 5 stars, whatever the hell that means. Anyway, so he followed that album up. Oh, this album was produced by David Spinoza, by the way, and he had a lot of good people on it, you know, Steve Gadd and the Brecker Brothers, Dr. John, a bunch of good people play on here as well. So the cream of the New York session people. Then 1978, he followed this up with One Eye Jack, also produced by David Spinoza. It's got a bunch of good songs on this. I think they were trying to figure out somehow to market him. It seems like most of the reggae stuff is relegated to side 2 on this record. and but it's got a lot of great stuff. He revisits She Didn't Lie from the first album on this, and has a bunch of good stuff. Haunted House, One-Eyed Jack, Scream in the Night, does a cover of No Woman, No Cry, that's pretty good. Oh My Soul, Desperation Drive, Been There and Back, which is kind of a song about him being critically acclaimed but not seeing any cash, and it's a pretty autobiographical thing. Very great song, very great album, and I think you should pick it up if you see it in the bins. Anyway, after that, he put up one more album for A&M called American Boy and Girl, which was a fine, fine album. He had a he had a hit in Europe off of this album with the song called Matador, which is a very cool tune. I mean, it's got, you know, reggae elements, and it's got some, you know, Spanish elements in it as well. In fact, the owner of A&M Records, Mr. Herb Albert, plays what is referred to as drunken horns on this song, little mariachi stuff. It's a really great song, and there's a bunch of other really cool songs on this album. Living for Me, Bad Dreams, City Kids. It all deals with like real stuff, you know, like he's living in New York City and he sees everything that's going on and he sings about it. This is like gritty, like real music about real stuff, and it's like got elements of reggae, soul, blues, rock and roll, everything. And he's a great singer, great soul singer, gritty, and he feels what he's writing about. These albums are worth picking up if you see them in the bins. American Boy and Girl by Garland Jeffreys. Yes, indeed. Of course, after this, he sort of gets dropped by A&M because, you know, critically acclaimed. Only success he really sees is in Europe. American label drops him or whatever. But then, of course, he gets picked up by Epic Records. And he puts out this record, Escape Artist. Highly acclaimed, produced by Bob Clearmountain and Garland himself. This is more of a rocky album, you know. It's got rock, ska, and reggae elements, some soul as well. And he sings at the top of his form. There's a cover of 96 Tears on here, which is very good. And Modern Lovers, Christine, nice ska tune, Ghost of a Chance, Innocent, True Confessions, ROCK, Graveyard Rock, Mystery Kids, and Jump Jump. Still has all these great New York session musicians on here playing great tunes sung by a great voice, a great singer, and one you should really check out. If you see Escape Artist in your bins, you should buy it. Alright? Whoa, okay. Around the same time, actually, there was a live album that came out, which I don't have. He was touring with The Rumor, Graham Parker's backing band, and they put out an album called Rock and Roll Adult, which I'm sure, if you see it, would be worth picking up. Because he's one great singer, and The Rumor are actually quite a fine band. Anyway, after that, for Epic, he also put out this album, Guts for Love, which this is more of a soul album. It was kind of dedicated to his wife Claire, and it's more about love than like social issues and things like, which is what his other albums are. This is more like a love album. And it's got songs like Real Men, Surrender, Fidelity, Rebel Love, Dance Up, Guts for Love, Shout, a cover of What Does It Take to win your love. But anyway, Loneliness, El Salvador, which brings in some more of the Latin flavor and American backslide. Of course, it's got reggae, soul, rock, everything you could possibly want on here, sung by a great singer. So if you see this, pick that one up as well. After this, he took like an 8-year hiatus where he, was maybe performing around New York, woodshedding, like they say, writing, researching, doing stuff like that, and just kind of hanging out. And then one day, he was at a Mets game, Shea Stadium. He went to get a hot dog, and some guy in the stands is like, "Hey, down in front there, buckwheat." And he kind of ticked him off, did a thing, and he wrote a whole album that kind of addresses all the racial stuff that he's had to deal with his whole life, being like a mixed race kid growing up and trying to make it in the record industry where, he's too black for some people, too white for some people, and too this for that and too this for that, and which kind of kept him from reaching probably the heights that he should have based on his talent. And so he ended up releasing this album called Don't Call Me Buckwheat, which is like a very good album. It's got some rap elements added to the reggae and soul and rock stuff going on, and it really addresses race in America and the problems that we have with it. And it's a fine record, and it's definitely worth listening to, and you should pick it up if you see it. It's got songs like Moonshine in the Cornfield, Welcome to the World, Don't Call Me Buckwheat, Color Line, very good song, Hail Hail Rock and Roll, I Was Afraid of Malcolm, cool tune. Anyway, Murder Jubilee, which is a cool tune, Rachel Repertoire, and it ends with a cover of Frankie Lyman's I'm Not a Know-It-All. So he doesn't take himself that seriously, and he knows that, this is just his experience, and he doesn't have all the answers, but he knows what he's singing about. Anyway, you should pick this up if you see it. It's a great record by a great singer. And that's all that I have by him. There's also a greatest hits A&M put out called Matador and More that undoubtedly is good. Also, RCA put out an album after Don't Call Me Buckwheat called Wildlife Dictionary, but that was only released in Europe in 1997. Don't Call Me Buckwheat came out in 92, by the way. And since then, he's had a few independent releases on his own label called, in 07, he had an album called I'm Alive. In 2011, he had The King of In-Between, which I believe was, of course, critically acclaimed, like most of his stuff. And 2013, Truth Serum. In 2017, 14 Steps to Harlem, all of which I'm sure are good albums. There was his wife actually did a documentary on him a few years ago called The King of In-Between that I contributed some money to and got like 5 tunes unreleased online that are excellent. So I'm sure any of these CDs that you can find will be excellent. If you see a CD with Garland Jeffreys on it, I would say pick it up because it's bound to be great. Anyway, I don't know if this goes well. I may do some other ones. I probably will do some other ones, even if this one goes horribly. Anyway, I hope you like this. Hope you got an idea of some new tunes to pick up and ones that I think you will enjoy. So anyway, have a wonderful, talk to you later, and see you in the future. Bye.